Dear colleagues, I feel honored to be a member of the board. I feel sincerely grateful to Professor Juliana Gomez and to all for organization of this significant scientific event. My greetings to everyone who has joined our symposium. Today I and my colleague will present our findings on stereotyping in the social media discourse of influencers. The study of stereotyping is closely connected to psycholinguistics as it examines the relationship between social cognition and verbalization. Today we're going to consider several issues that concern stereotyping on social media. The central research question that guides our studies is how do influencers, linguistic and discursive practices contribute to the formation of stereotypes. Nowadays, it's difficult to find a person who is not involved in social media. The development of Instagram, YouTube and TikTok has given rise to a world-spread phenomenon known as social media influencers. These public figures build the devoted audience which counts their opinions, follow their advices and act in accordance with them. The younger generation trusts influencers more than mainstream media. The survey that I conducted in the university I work shows students appreciate their authenticity, sincerity, good looks, direct and empathetic communication style. Influencers not only create entertainment content or promote different products, they encourage civic participation in social issues. One of such issues is liberalization of abortion laws. Most acute, the problem has arisen in the United States. Adherents of pro-life movement consider fetus a human being, therefore destruction of an unborn baby is a grave moral evil and a violation of human right to life. Pro-life movement arose from the groups of Catholics joined together to oppose the feminist pro-choice movement that advocated for legal abortion and reproductive freedom. The members of non-profit organization Planned Parenthood and supporters of abortions argue that right-to-life forces are attempting to push Catholic values on a diverse American population. In this social context, pro-life influencers are developing and sustaining parasocial relations with the audience to persuade in pro-life views. Their persuasive discourse involves stereotyping as argumentative tool to convince people to accept their point of view that abortion should be banned. The purpose of my research is to examine linguistic, paralinguistic and non-linguistic means used by pro-life influencers for stereotyping. The research data consists of the content which is generated by 3 pro-life macro-influencers, Lila Rose, Kristen Hawkins and Abby Johnson. A purposive sampling technique was employed to select data from social media platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and a personal website. Theoretically, the research relies on the premise that stereotypes are simplified, socially constructed and culturally bound images. Stereotypes spread in communication through specific configurations of popular narrative patterns and categorical schemas. These conditions discursively oriented research that grounds in information of the context-bound and dynamic nature of discourse in which social reality is constructed. Stereotypes assist people to adjust to the complexity of social reality by simplifying identification of individuals and groups. Media stereotyping is the process that includes coding, retaining of information, and activating it in working memory for application in judgments and guidance of behavior. Applied in my study, interdisciplinary approach combines psychologic, sociologic, cognitive linguistic and media rhetoric views on stereotyping. In cognitive linguistic aspect, stereotypes are results of evaluative categorization in which salient features of social groups and individuals are distinguished and evaluated in accordance with the values and standards of the society. For example, a good father is categorized by an action-oriented force and a strong sense of personal duty. These qualities, which are traditionally perceived positively, are viewed by the influencer Lila Rose charming and endearing. From the view of social identity theory, stereotypes are simplified generalizations about in-groups and out-groups. Devaluing an outgroup through exaggerated differences and portraying the in-group as superior boosts self-esteem of pro-lifers. Pro-choicers are portrayed as baby killers, while pro-lifers are savers of children's lives. According to stereotype content model, which counts warmth associated with a friendly attitude to social groups, and competence, which points to the recognition of their abilities, pro-lifers are evaluated as outstanding members of society who deserve respect and admiration. They are successful in building family relations, raising children, and making careers. Pro-choicers are selfish, aggressive, cruel, and deserving denunciation. They are capable of doing harm to the society. This recognition requires active action from pro-lifers as well as the rest of the society. In the frame of media rhetoric theory, persuasive messages of pro-life influencers are directed at convincing audience by utilizing targeted strategies that rely on classic rhetoric canons: ethos, credibility, pathos, emotion, and logos argumentation. The credibility is established through creation of positive self-image of pro-lifers. Deliberate simplicity of this image and its emotional load contributes to creation of self-stereotype. Focusing on their most positive features, pro-lifers distinguish differences in characteristics between themselves and pro-choicers, thus establishing a demarcation between us and them. In-depth analysis is provided by the complex of interpretative, pragmatic, and narrative techniques. Interpretation of statements involves investigation of contextual assumptions and implicatures that refine and adjust comprehension. The attention is paid to syntactic units that convey value judgments, inferences, associative characteristics, conclusions about pro-lifers and their opponents. By arguing to be pro-abortion is to be in favor of genocide, Christian Hawkins concludes that abortion advocates are evildoers that sanction the deliberate killing of preborn children, thus promote the destruction of the nation. Pragmatic analysis is directed at the author's intentions that convey meaning. It takes into account linguistic and extra-linguistic means that create evaluative meanings. For example, don't call yourself feminist if you support dismembering preborn baby girls. From a pro-lifer's view, focusing on equality of rights, feminists disregard the rights of preborn children. Advocating legal reproductive rights means to promote dismembering of children, which is universally condemned. Narrative analysis reveals influences self-representations. For example, the site of Abby Johnson presents the story of her pro-life activism. According to canonical narrative schema of Gramscian semiotics, her story consists of 5 components. The first action component includes competence. Abby worked in Planned Parenthood, where she witnessed abortions, and performance. Abby quit her job and began advocating pro-life. The fourth component, manipulation, is observed in Planned Parenthood's actions to silence Abby with a gag order that brought her to court. The fifth component, sanction, deals with acknowledgement of the sham lawsuit and its dismissal from court. Abby Johnson has received her reward. She is a frequently requested guest on a variety of shows, a successful writer, and a macro-influencer. Interpretation of the findings demonstrates systematic and strategic use of influencers' language in stereotyping. The main syntactic characteristics is simplicity that facilitates understanding of their thoughts and concepts. Parallel structures are used to link ideas of equal importance within a sentence. It gives the message rhythm and persuasiveness. Fighting for their same objectives, fighting for themselves, for the family. Frequent use of short sentences commands attention and emphasizes critical points. As a Catholic, you are violating canon law, so as a Catholic, you are sinning. Grammatically incomplete fragment sentences convey significant self-contained ideas. Zygote, embryo, fetus, infant, toddler, teenager, adult. Series of short and distinct sentences following one another builds tension and energetic rhythm. Marriage isn't a trap. Babies ain't burdens. Motherhood is a gift. Stimulating sentences provoke thoughts and inspire action. Every baby deserves their mother. And surrogacy. Influencer syntax characterizes them as confident leaders and public speakers. The diction of influencers is strategically chosen to establish an impression of authoritative credibility. They do not use abusive language and slang. Their communication style precise and professional. The usage of clipped words such as props, properties, and trad woman, traditional woman makes the speech of the influencers less formal. Evaluative adjectives, demonic, hateful, gruesome, and nouns, evil, infanticide, murder, sin, express their value judgments and emotional stance toward pro-choices, facilitating a negative attitude to them, while amiable attitude to in-group members is conveyed by adjectives selfless, beautiful, amazing. Planned Parenthood abortion centers are named death camps. This metonymic designation refers to Nazi centers built for their systematic and massive murder of people. This implies that Planned Parenthood members are fascists. The influencers estimate their actions as killing, murder, genocide, infanticide, slaughter, dismembering. This lexicon contributes to the negative stereotype of the Planned Parenthood members. They commit crimes from social as well as religious viewpoints. The assertion justifies ban of the organization. A woman who has abortion is regarded antithesis to what means to be a woman. They are evaluated as horrific and deserve to be stigmatized and shamed. As Abby Johnson states, these women are not troubled, they are not in distress, but they are vulnerable to drinking, drugs, depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Negative portraying of pro-choicers, LGBT, and women who have abortions is aggravated by portraying preborn babies as perfect, beautiful, precious, blessing made in the name of Godchild. Photos and videos emphasize the value of mother's love that protects children. Abortion is interpreted by the influencers as sacrifice, inconsistent with Christianity. Dichotomy arises between demonic pro-choicers and mighty warriors, profilers. The metaphor mighty warriors refers to the biblical phrase about King David's brave soldiers. Pro-lifers are compared to them on the ground of their courage, valor, loyalty, and leadership. Biblical citations indicate pro-lifers' adherence to Catholicism. Naming Daughter of God conveys spiritual identity of a pro-lifer. It represents position of royalty, favor, and direct access to the Creator. By stating we don't want to be a trad or a girl boss, we want to be a Proverb 31 woman, Lila Rose distinguishes the difference between a pro-life woman and a housewife and careerist. A trad wife embraces traditional gender roles, focusing on homemaking, child care, and supporting her husband. A girl boss is a feminine captain of industry and a role model of female ambition and success. A Proverb 31 woman refers to the old scripture poem, The Wife of Noble Character, that describes virtues of a worthy woman with whom Lila Rose identifies herself. A Proverb 31 woman embraces loyalty and care of her husband and her children, diligence that brings success. She helps women in need, participating in pro-life movement. She is well-groomed and stylish. She isn't worried about getting older. Her future is secure as her children love her and respect her. Her husband supports her gifts and safeguards her talents. Photos from her Instagram assist in picturing this exemplary woman, perfectly styled hair and smart attire in public and in family circle. Visual aids play an important role in stereotyping. They are carefully and thoughtfully chosen by influencers. The photos and videos of their opponents expose their deviant and intolerable behavior. Stunning photos and videos of babies emphasize cruelty and depravity of pro-choicers. Visuals accompany their narratives about outstanding pro-lifers. For example, pictures of Jana Mola, canonized by Catholic Church, devoted wife, mother, and pediatrician, or Rose's grandmother, one of the very first supporters of live action. An illustrative photo of Abby Johnson on her personal website shows her reading the book A Good Woman by Louise Bronhill. The novel follows the life of a strong-willed woman who fights with the societal pressures. The book provokes reflection on the notion of what it truly means to be a good woman. Abby's short biography on this page tells about her great efforts to help women in need. This meta-message delivers her desire to be evaluated a good woman, as the title of the book suggests. Conveying emotion and adding context, paralinguistic means significantly influence the interpretation of influencers' messages. Lila Rose speaks in a calm and balanced tone. She employs a steady and even-tempered approach to communication. Urging pro-lifers to action, she says in a low and measured voice, "One thing that every pro-life person can do is to go to an abortion clinic, stand there on a sidewalk, peacefully," here is emphasis, "and pray for the end of abortions." Her posture is always straight and graceful. She obviously controls her mimics. Her style of communication is authoritative and at the same time intimate. This supplements her image of a balanced and reliable person. More emotional and engaged are paralinguistic features of Christine Hawking's style. She often speaks in a loud voice to ensure focus on pivotal points. Raising her voice, she establishes her leadership and dominance. She frequently uses hand gestures and mimicking to emphasize her ideas and evaluations. Kristen Hawkins maintains her image of a strong, sincere, and self-assured woman. Based on the analysis, results showed the pro-life influences discourse is characterized by consistent stereotyping. Persuasive and emotional influences discourse creates the necessary psychological conditions for strengthening stereotypes in social consciousness. Personalized information, narrative, and rhetorical techniques create a powerful channel of communicating stereotypes. Employed by the influencers, contrasting strategy emphasizes differences between their image and that of pro-choices. Evaluative diction polarizes opinions, creating dichotomy of beautiful and horrific in stereotyping pro-lifers and pro-choices. Pro-lifers' positive stereotype is the tool to achieve their personal aim of self-actualization and social aim to achieve community welfare through ban of abortions. My future research will concern dynamics of media stereotyping with regard to anti-abortion movement across periods from 1840 to 1900 and its peak in the 1980s. I also plan to study dynamics of gender stereotypes in Ukraine. Thank you for attention. I am ready to answer your questions.
Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be part of the 13th ISAPL International Congress. Please allow me to express my sincere gratitude to the chair of the Congress, Professor Gomez, to the ISAPL Organizing and Scientific Committee, to Professor Lyubymova, and to all the participants of the Congress. My name is Galina Petrova, and I represent the Department of Spanish and Modern Greek Philology and Translation of Kyiv National Linguistic University. And I would like to present a paper titled Stereotypes in Influencers' Food Advertising Discourse. Time does not stand still. Technologies continue to evolve, people gain more knowledge, their choices become more conscious, and advertising is trusted less and less. At the same time, however, the marketing industry is also developing and seeking alternative ways to influence consumer decisions beyond traditional commercials. For instance, the promotion of various products and services through popular bloggers and influencers is becoming increasingly widespread. The linguistic and visual strategies embedded in the content of social media are turning into powerful mechanisms of persuasion and influencing consumer decision-making, while influencer marketing is progressively shaping public perceptions of nutrition, health, body norms, and lifestyle. This study examines the mechanisms through which social media influencers construct, reproduce, and disseminate stereotypes related to food in contemporary digital communication in Ukrainian, English, and modern Greek. The topic of food advertising on social media is highly relevant within Ukrainian, English, and Greek-speaking academic contexts from the economic, psychological, and philological perspectives. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have been selected as a primary data sources as they constitute dominant ecosystems through which food-related content circulates and acquires social significance. The findings indicate that there is a distinct pattern in influencers' use of strategies to market products and to persuade their followers to buy them. Since advertising on social media is not just text, but multimodal ensemble in which the verbal component, the word, is inseparably intertwined with the non-verbal one, emojis, fonts, the color palette of dishes, background music in reels, body presentation, color schemes, camera angles, and aestheticized images of food. These visual cues amplify linguistic frames, creating coherent, persuasive narratives that naturalize narrow notions of attractiveness, health, and social success. So, methodologically, the study employs multimodal discourse analysis that investigates different communication modalities, visual, verbal, and contextual, to discover the ways in which these convey meaning and persuade audiences. The psycholinguistic component interprets how these verbal-visual combinations influence cognitive processing and emotional priming, shaping implicit attitudes toward food, body, and identity. Stereotypes can be observed both in the products themselves, through their design, imaginary, and packaging colors, as well as in the phrasing of their slogans, and in the presentations created by bloggers and influencers. This study is guided by the following questions. What types of stereotypes most frequently appear in influencer discourse about food? How are these stereotypes linguistically structured through lexical choice, evaluative adjectives, generalizations, imperatives, and affective framing? How do visual and multimodal elements reinforce the verbal construction of these stereotypes? What psycholinguistics effects do such discursive patterns produce, particularly regarding identity formation and health-related beliefs? In contemporary research, stereotypes are classified according to the object of stereotyping, with distinctions typically made between body-related, cultural, socioeconomic, and gender stereotypes. Linguistic encoding of stereotypes in influencer advertising operates through markers that form consumption scenarios, frames, which shape the interpretation of the product and influence consumer behavior. Rather than activating a simple thought about the product, advertising triggers entire narrative and emotional scenarios, often via storytelling and effective framing. For example, in social media storytelling, instead of buy coffee, we encounter descriptions of a morning, the aroma of coffee, and the perfect breakfast that inspires you for the whole day. An important role is played by the interaction between frames and conceptual metaphors. Frames structure perception, while metaphors dynamize it, enhancing the overall persuasive impact of the message. Body-oriented stereotypes are among the most common in food advertising discourse. They are notions of the ideal body shaped by sociocultural norms and actively reproduced on social media. In influencer food advertising, they appear through visual imagery, metaphors, the self-presentations, where food consumption is framed as a path to achieving the desired body. Thus, advertising not only reflects, but also reinforces these standards. The health beauty stereotype links slimness to proper, natural, and organic nutrition and is verbalized through lexemes such as natural, healthy, and beneficial. In influencers advertising, food is framed not only as nourishment, but as a key to energy, physical attractiveness, and overall well-being, reflecting contemporary lifestyle ideals. At the same time, the pleasure enjoyment frame is activated. Taste and sensory experience are described in rich emotional terms and embedded in personal narratives and everyday routines. This allows influencers to present food as both enjoyable and self-affirming, strengthening emotional engagement and enhancing the perceived authenticity of the product. Cultural stereotypes are generalized conceptions of the norms and values of particular cultures reproduced through language and media, which also contribute their formation and reinforcement. In influencer food advertising, they manifest in the symbolic representation of products as markers of tradition, authenticity, or a particular lifestyle, thereby adding value to the products and influencing consumer choice. The authenticity frame in food advertising emphasizes a product's origin, its genuineness, and its connection to tradition. It is verbalized through lexemes such as real, traditional, authentic, as well as through toponyms and ethnonyms that signal quality and cultural value. Products are presented as carriers of national practices and time-tested experience, which enhances consumer trust and their symbolic significance. For every nation, traditions play a significant role. It inhabits preferences and practices of representatives of a particular ethnic group, contain a national cultural component, and function as ethnomarkers. These are reflected in language through the names of traditional dishes, the selection of ingredients, methods of preparation, as well as dietary restrictions, preferences, and related practices. At the same time, this frame coexists with and partly contrasts with the novelty frame, based on the idea that new is better. It is realized through markers such as new and innovative, highlighting in the renewal of the product, its ingredients, or modus of presentation, and reflecting an orientation towards progress and modernity. Socioeconomic stereotypes are generalized notions linking status and quality to levels of wealth. In food advertising, they manifest through positioning products as premium and as markers of social class, where consumption becomes a means of signaling status. Influencers reinforce these perceptions by associating food with lifestyle and normalizing the model expensive equals high quality through lexemes such as refined and elite. Evaluative adjectives form the uniqueness and selectivity frame, which primarily belongs with socioeconomic stereotypes and is associated with ideas of scarcity, status, and limited access. Through lexemes such as unique, exceptional, and select, advertising constructs a mythologized image of a product as superior, even within the mass market. This linguistic strategy not only enhances the message's persuasiveness, but also creates an associative link between rarity and higher value. It appeals to consumers' desire to choose the best while simultaneously activating the aspiration for symbolic belonging to a privileged social group. As a result, the product is perceived not merely as food, but as a marker of quality, distinction, and social status. Socioeconomic stereotypes are also evident in the healthy food segment. Organic and eco-labeled products are associated with higher income and a conscious lifestyle. In contrast, mass or fast food is linked to lower status. As a result, advertising reinforces the perception of a connection between diet, health, and the social hierarchy. Gender stereotypes are socially established beliefs about the roles and traits of men and women that can lead to inequality and limit individual choice. In influencer food advertising, they manifest through binary models. For example, feminine, low-calorie foods versus masculine, high-protein and high-calorie options, as well as though the promotion of body ideals, slimness, and muscularity. Moreover, these stereotypes intersect with class and cultural assumptions and are embedded in emotional engaged narratives such as healthy lifestyle and the dream body. As a result, they not only reflect social norms, but also subtly shape consumer practices and audience expectations. Autonomous sensory meridian response functions as an effective multimodal strategy in influencer food advertising, where promotion is embedded into personal content and presented as a consumption experience. Through sound and visual effects, it creates a sense of sensory presence, allowing the audience to virtually experience the taste and texture of the product. In this format, the verbal component is minimized and persuasiveness is achieved through non-verbal sensory suggestion that shapes perceptions of pleasure and product quality. This is particularly evident in food influencer discourse, where bloggers often limit themselves to brief captions, for example, "so crispy, it just melts, 100% natural," while the primary meaning is conveyed through sensory stimuli. In the Greek segment of social media, influencers actively use ASMR in videos featuring traditional products, olive oil, cheeses, pastries, where the sound of pouring and baking the product reinforces perception of locality and cultural authenticity. Well-known bloggers include Akis Petritzikis and Yorgos Mavropoulos. In the Ukrainian segment, a similar function is performed by videos featuring homemade pastries or frying in a pan, where ASMR combines with nostalgic motifs such as "just like in childhood." So ASMR functions as a mechanism of transition between the frames of authenticity and tradition. First, through sound and texture, it creates an effect of product realness, after which verbal or visual markers add the cultural context, transforming this frame into one of tradition. Therefore, ASMR can be reviewed as a sensory bridge between individual experience and collective cultural memory. The American variant of ASMR discourse differs. There is virtually no appeal to historical or national gastronomic heritage. Instead, three interconnected parameters dominate: pleasure, abundance, and the intensity of sensory experience. Illustrative examples include TikTok accounts such as Foodie China, 888, as well as numerous profiles specializing in mukbang content with ASMR elements. At the level of frame organization, two main semantic centers can be identified: the authenticity frame and the hedonistic frame. ASMR content created by influencers directly interacts with pre-existing cultural stereotypes of consumption. In particular, it activates the sensory stereotype. Crunchy equals fresh, high quality. The authenticity stereotype. Real sound equals real product. The pleasure stereotype. Consumptions equals enjoyment. The impulsive desire stereotype. I see or hear it, so I want it immediately. Thus, ASMR does not create new meanings, but rather reinforces already established cognitive schemas in the consumer's mind, transferring them to the sensory level. So the study demonstrates that influencer discourse functions as a powerful mechanism for the circulation of stereotypes and contributes to the normalization of restrictive and at times harmful perceptions of food, health, and identity. It also underscores the need for ethical standards in influencer marketing, as well as media literacy initiatives that can help audience critically evaluate persuasive digital content. So that's all. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Professor, for your report. It eliminates a civic aspect of influencer social media discourse. I have read your works. You interpret stereotypes rather broadly. Would you please explain the difference between a cultural concept and a sociocultural stereotype?
Thank you, dear colleague, for this intriguing question. Let me first give an example of a stereotype that represents not a person or social group, but a cultural phenomenon: Hollywood. Media portrayals of the lifestyle, activity, and personal characteristics of those who work in American film industry promote Hollywood values: looking young, beautiful, successful, by showing the satisfaction and happiness experienced by successful people in Hollywood who enjoy life as if in paradise. Media has contributed to conversion of Hollywood into a stereotype. Media replicates it according to a certain patterns. Evaluative and emotional character, Hollywood has become stereotypical symbol of success and fame. As for the difference between a cultural concept and sociocultural stereotype, I should say both a cultural concept and the sociocultural stereotype are results of categorization. But categorization in which stereotypes appear is evaluative. It is directed as distinguishing and evaluating salient features of social phenomena, groups, or individuals according to cultural values and social standards. A concept reveals a complicated cognitive structure, while a stereotype consists of a set of descriptive and evaluative features. Emotions mark noticeable characteristics that serve as cues for recognizing stereotypes. The difference between a stereotype and a concept is reflected in specific feature of their linguistic realization. Concepts manifest in a wide variety of linguistic means that verbalize a particular fragment of conceptual system of nation, whereas verbalization of a stereotype is clearly reflected in its interpretative meaning in the forms of associations, connotations, pragmatic propositions, and implicatures. However, I consider the main clear-cut distinction between a sociocultural stereotype and a cultural concept lies in a perspective nature of a prescriptive, nature of a stereotype. Stereotypes serve as mental patterns that simplify and guide identification and comprehension of objects of social reality. They also serve as benchmarks for acceptable and unacceptable behavior in certain societies. If you are satisfied with my answer, let's move on to your next question.
Thank you. So, in your report, you've mentioned other stereotypes, not only the stereotypes of pro-lifer and pro-choicer. What are they? Could you give the example?
I see you've listened to my report attentively. Thank you. Analyzing influencers' messages, I found two more distinctively different in evaluative and emotional stereotype of a real masculinity and negative stereotype of LGBT. They are defined by the attitude to children, heteronormative, caring father, and selfish LGBT. One, a heteronormative man is described as a Christian man who makes, as Lila Rose says, the greatest promise a man can make, the promise of lifelong fidelity to one woman and children brought into the world through their life. LGBT is portrayed as deviant people that cannot properly raise adopted children. As Christian Hawking states, they are being experimented on with an ideology that ignores reality. Boys are boys and girls are girls, plain and simple. Biology does the influences operate by positive stereotypes of themselves and their close surroundings and negative stereotypes of everybody else that do not correspond their norms and standards.
Yeah, and I have another one question. I have heard the influencer tells the story of her grandmother. What is it about? In what a way it contributes to stereotyping in the influencer's discourse?
Thank you, dear colleague, for the question. Lila Rose's positive self-image is supported by the story of her grandmother. That was one of the very first supporters of live action. She volunteered at a local pregnancy center. She was always involved in helping charities and serving others. Lila Rose called her beautiful and showed her respect and love. Besides fortification of credibility and augmentation in the discourse of Lila Rose, these narration adjust and complement a positive stereotype of a pro-lifer. And now let me go on to my questions I'd like to ask you. First, I'd like to thank you, dear colleague, for the engaging report. To some degree, we all apply to advertisements of different types. Advertisers exploit stereotypes to attract our attention. Could you please give an example of how different stereotypes are combined in an advertisement?
Thank you for your question. An illustrative example of the use of cultural, social, and gender stereotypes is on the slogan of Descent. It is a beer. Descent, сильное пиво. Descent, strong beer. Beer is conventionally perceived as a drink for men. The slogan directly activates a military frame with a following structure. Soldiers, predominantly men, physical endurance, risk, danger, discipline, strength, and courage. Thus, the product becomes automatically associated with these qualities. At the same time, the slogan clearly reproduces a traditional masculine stereotype. For example, a model is a real man equals strength plus endurance plus military experience. Since descent as airborne troops represents the archetype of the masculine warrior, strong beer is positioned as a drink that corresponds to the strengths, and therefore the product is intended for real men. The culture stereotype of strength as a value is conveyed through the adjective strong, which carries dual coding, literal high alcohol content, metaphorical physical strength, character, and personal toughness. So here the conceptual metaphor operates as follows. Alcoholic strength equals personal strength.
Thank you. Yes, advertisers boost our emotional response of the public in various ways. They started to use emojis which are popular on social media. Emojis marketing evolved from a niche Japanese mobile feature into a universal advertising digital icon. What is the role of emojis in food advertising on social media? How these small pictograms contribute to stereotyping?
Sure. Emojis are the part of the multimodal ensemble which perform semantic and pragmatic functions, participate in the construction of taste and value stereotypes, and are used as substitutes for punctuation as well as markers of emotion. Emoji are not simply colorful decoration of digital messages, but are rather age-sensitive persuasion levels whose effectiveness in social media posts hinges on whether they convey sentiment or illustrate the textual content. Visualizing all the ingredients in the recipe, most post may appeal to Gen X and baby boomers, but will alienate Gen Z. In social media food advertising, emojis function as multimodal signs that combine the visual representation of a product with the emotional market making of its consumer appeal. They not only accompany verbal text, but can also replace entire anti-racist structure messages and create the effect of informal, conventional communication between the brand and its audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Dear colleague, you've studied digital communication in Ukraine, English, and modern Greek. I have such a question to you. Have you observed any difference in stereotyping in these languages and cultures?
Sure, thank you for your question. Yes, the analysis shows that the main types of stereotypes, such as body-related, cultural, socioeconomic, and gender stereotypes, are common across Ukrainian, Greek, and English in its American or Russian influence discourse. However, their realization differs significantly. In Greek and Ukrainian contexts, food is strongly associated with tradition, authenticity, and cultural memory, often reinforced through ASMR and nostalgic narratives. In contrast, the American English discourse, focuses primarily on pleasure, abundance, and sensory intensity, with little reference to cultural heritage. Therefore, while the cognitive basis of stereotyping is universal, its discursive and cultural manifestations are clearly shaped by local values and communicative practices. That's it.
Thank you. It was new and interesting for me to hear about autonomous sensory meridian response that influencers use to evoke specific sensations in their audiences. What is the manipulation potential of influencers' ACMR content?
Thank you for your question. It's a very interesting topic, really. So, unlike traditional advertising, where communication is institutional and overtly commercial, in the case of influencers, ASMR functions as a convert form of promotional impact, integrates into content presented as a personal consumption experience. The influencer, through sound and imagery, creates the effect of the viewer's presence in a consumption scenario. Through sounds such as crunching, cutting, pouring, and swallowing, the viewer does not merely perceive the product, but sensorily experience it, significantly enhancing the persuasive power of the message. According to Van Dyke, influence operates through the formation of mental models within ASMR. These models are shaped not through argumentation, but through sensory representation of taste, texture, and pleasure. In the practices of food influencers, several key ASMR strategies can be identified. Acoustic simulation of consumption, demonstration of sounds such as biting, crunching, and pouring a beverage. Visual hyperdetailing, close-up shots of product textures, melting cheese, flowing chocolate, drops of honey. The first-person consumption effect, camera positioning from the viewer's perspective, enhancing identification. And minimization of speech, the absence of detailed transcription, replaced by short emotional reactions such as, wow, perfect, and so on. On TikTok and Instagram, this format is highly effective as it aligns with the logic of the platforms. Short, emotional, rich content that easily triggers immediate audience reactions. And from the discursive perspective, the ASMR level of representation plays a key role in which sound effect acquires hyperbolized character. This involves the construction of a kind of sensory hyperreality, where amplified food sounds create an illusion of a more intense consumption experience than in reality. In this context, the auditory component doesn't merely accompany the visual, but functions as an independent means of influence, activating psychological responses such as appetite, desire, and pleasure. Thus, within the framework of food influencer discourse, ASMR functions as a key tool of implicit suggestion that integrates sensory impact, cultural stereotypes of naturalness, tradition, or pleasure, and personalized communication. This combination facilitates the formation of impulsive consumer responses and consequently ensures a high level of effectiveness in food advertising within the digital environment. That's all that I wanted to answer. If you
Thank you. It was really interesting because it's new for me, and you will explain everything that I wanted to hear.
thank you.
Thank you, dear caller. I hope our discussion facilitates the understanding of stereotyping in social media discourse. That's all.